안녕하세요, 여러분. 매트입니다. 유난히 힘든 월요일을 잘 버텼습니다. 축하드립니다. 제가 오늘 여기서 비포슬립 5일 동안 읽어주겠는데 제가 한국말을 좀 서툴러서 귀여우겠지만 인트로만 귀여워요. 나중에 영어로 하겠습니다. Hello everyone, I'm on Before Sleep and I'll be reading you guys 5 different chapters for 5 different days. Today's Monday. You worked so hard. So I will read you this really nice chapter and hopefully you sleep to it, get some rest, and let's go. Monday. What shape are you in? I'm not sure when it started, but since some time in my childhood, my gaze was always drawn to the faces of the people around me. It was the different looks on their faces that seemed especially noticeable to my eyes. The look of concern hidden behind my mother's bright smile as she said, "Oh, my son." The emptiness I saw behind my friend's laughter as he giggled, saying, "Bro, isn't this really hilarious?" I was always aware of those fleeting expressions, appearing only to quickly disappear from their faces. Every time that happened, I would ask, "Did something happen? I could tell something's up from your face." Then I'd take them out to eat something delicious or bring them somewhere nice, hoping that my small kindness could brighten them up. Deep down, in the hearts of the ones dear to me, when I'd hear, "Thank you, you made me feel so much better," it touched my heart in a way that went beyond simple satisfaction. The fact that I was someone who could help others, that alone felt like a medal in my life. Since then, I think I've lived my life paying close attention to the faces around me, just in case I might pass by someone struggling through a rough patch. But a friend of mine who knows me well told me that I was a careaholic and that it was my weakness, and that it was just a nice guy syndrome, that I was doing things I didn't have to, all because of my desire for recognition, that I was letting myself be used by others and failing to gain anything for my own good. That, in fact, many people felt I was overbearing because of my behavior, that it was a weakness I needed to fix. This side of me was my weakness. I was shocked to hear that from my friend, but they seemed right, because sometimes I get tired of myself too. After that day, I started to re-examine my actions one by one. When I saw a gloomy look on my friend's face, I pretended not to notice it, afraid they might find it burdensome that I did. And when I felt the urge to help someone in need, I held back, thinking it was probably just an act to make myself feel good. If someone asked too much of me, I'd wonder if I somehow seemed easy to them. I found myself searching for YouTube videos with titles like "How to Say No" and "How to Love Yourself," trying to live according to what the world claims are the right answers for life. But how can I explain this? The more I tried to care less about others, the more time I had for myself. But it didn't make me happy at all. I thought that if I fixed this weakness, I'd become a better person. But instead, the actions I took to fix it only seemed to create new weaknesses, one after another. I became suspicious, sensitive, and fearful, and I didn't like anything about myself. How did I end up like this? One morning, I was heading to my first class of the day. I was walking briskly, eager not to miss the attendance check, when I noticed a little boy riding a bike. He was riding so unsteadily that I thought he might fall at any moment. My attention locked onto him. Sure enough, as he turned a corner, he toppled over with a loud thud. Without thinking, I ran over and helped him. Are you okay? Does it hurt? Are you hurt anywhere? No, I'm okay, thank you. But even as he said he was fine, I caught a flicker of anxiety in his eyes. The boy seemed scared to get back on the bike. I'm glad you're not hurt too badly, but aren't you a little afraid to ride again? Where were you headed? I'll walk you there. Really? Thank you. The boy thanked me with a small bow and then gave me a big, bright smile. I felt a lump rise in my throat, as if I had just seen a look I've been longing to see for so long. I walked alongside him, pulling his bike by my side. We chatted about where he was going, why he was riding alone, what kinds of things he enjoyed, and even what he thought my job might be. Before long, we arrived in front of his elementary school. All right, off you go. Have fun today. Even though we'd only just met, I felt a little sad to say goodbye. But I left him and turned to head toward my own school. By now, the first core class had already ended. I pictured my friend giving me a hard time, nagging that I had helped someone else at the expense of my own responsibilities. But I couldn't help but wonder, can this really be a weakness if it makes me this happy? Could it be that what seems like a weakness to others is actually a strength to me? And maybe what other people see as a strength doesn't always feel that way to me. At least for me, this weakness felt like a strength. So much so that I began to think maybe weaknesses and strengths might just be the same thing. The weakness of being a careaholic, of not being able to say no, could actually be a strength of being considerate and kind. The weakness of obsessing over trivial things could be a strength of being meticulous and making fewer mistakes. The weakness of being emotionally volatile and sensitive could be a strength of being artistically in tune with the world. The weakness of feeling restless and mentally unstable could be a strength of being active and passionate. The weakness of seeing things through a negative lens could be a strength of having a perspective that pushes for a better world. Is it really necessary to separate strengths from weaknesses when, in the end, I am the sum of them all? Every one of my so-called weaknesses is what makes me most lovable. You are most natural, most beautiful when you are simply yourself. What about you? If your sharp edges poke someone, that's okay. Just try to soften them a little. But don't ruin who you are, because you are perfectly beautiful just the way you are. Just like I am happy, exactly the way I am. 네. 처음으로 제가 다른 사람한테 책을 읽는데, 뭐가 읽어도 감동이 있고, 너무, 뭐가 다른 사람이 저한테 책을 읽었으면 사랑스러울 것 같아서 너무 좋은 것 같고, 따뜻한 마음으로 읽었습니다. 네. 이 질문이 조금 특이하긴 한데, 나의 모양은 내가 딱히 원하는 모양은 없는 것 같아요. 뭐가 이거 나다. 그리고 여러분은 이렇게 나를 본다. 그래서 저는 직접은 어떤 모양인지 모르겠지만 여러분이 나중에 한번 댓글에서 얘기해 주세요. 저도 궁금하네요. 스스로 생각하는 단점. 일단은 지금은 나의 한국어입니다. 하지만 그것도 나의 매력이라고 합니다. 제로스들이 그걸 귀엽다고 해줘서 너무너무 감사하고요. 이 책처럼 나의 단점은 나의 힘도 될 수 있다 이라는 얘기인데 딱 똑같은 생각입니다. 네, 월요일인데 제일 힘든 날을 잘 버텼습니다, 여러분. 그래서 내가 읽었던 책을 잘 들었으면 좋겠고 오늘도 잠 많이 자고 내일은 화요일인데 그것도 힘드네요. 근데 화이팅! 할 수 있어! 근데 내일은 또 좋게 읽어줄 테니까 화이팅 하자. 사랑해. 바이바이. 안녕하세요, 매튜입니다. 오늘은 화요일입니다. 여러분 고생이 너무 많았고요. 힘들겠지만 자기 전에 책을 한번 읽어볼게요. 오늘의 내용은 첫사랑이라고 해서 좀 설레게 해보겠습니다. Tuesday, Seasons of First Love. We were 15. It was a spring day. The scent of roses surrounded me. We were probably on a class picnic. The usual quiet rose garden buzzed with the noise of our classmates. But to my ears, where you stood was a silent vacuum. Because it was the first time I saw you without your school uniform, you walked through the rose garden in a blue dress, and I followed you. There are red roses, white roses, and pink roses. But why aren't there blue roses? You asked, suddenly turning around as if you knew I was behind you. I couldn't answer. But in my mind, I whispered, you are a blue rose. That was my first confession, the one you never heard. We were 18. It was summer. A light drizzle fell from the sky. Looking tired, you said, how should I live now? Your eyes were wet, maybe from the rain. I wanted to dry them, but my hands were wet too. I'll be there for you, whatever you do. It was my second confession, though it might have sounded like the first to you. The rain grew heavier, and we passed the time sketching. You drew a blue rose. There are no blue roses in the world, but they still have a meaning. The flower language of blue roses is impossible. I knew that was your answer to my confession. We were 20, it was fall, we seemed freer somehow. You searched for your love, and I searched for mine. One clear day, with the rustling of fallen leaves beneath our feet in the cloudless autumn sky, stretched above, we sat together. You had broken up with your love, and I had broken up with mine. You understood me, and I understood you. We had a conversation without saying a word. We were 28. It was winter. The first snow came late this year, but when it did, the flakes were fluffy, unusual for the season's first snowfall. The world was blanketed in fresh white, and I decided I would make my final confession to you. I bought a bouquet of blue roses and made my way to your house. When we were 18, blue roses mean impossible, but at 28, they meant miracle, a love that never gives up. The sound of my footsteps on the snow-covered ground echoed louder than usual. As I neared your house, the white snow began to settle on the blue petals. I called you with a trembling voice, standing on the untouched snow in front of your door. I'm in front of your house right now. Will you come out? 제가 좀 설렜고요. 뭐가 읽고 그 둘 다의 사랑을 잘 느낄 수 있어서 너무 좋은 것 같았어요. 네. 첫사랑은 저희가 첫 공연했을 때, 첫 콘서트 했을 때 모든 제로즈를 그 파랑 장미 라이트 스틱을 보고 너무 감동을 받았고 너무 설렜고 새로운 설레는 마음인 것 같았어요. 여기 책에 있는 것처럼요. 제로즈 꽃은 처음 주는데 받아줄래? 제로즈 꽃은 처음 주는 건데 받아줄래? 화요일인데 여러분 고생이 너무 많았고요. 끝까지 들어줘서 너무 감사하고요. 푹 잠을 자고 내일도 뵙겠습니다. 많이 사랑해요. Good night. Wednesday, Drought. No one would have realized that my heart was so parched and cracked, teetering on the verge of turning into ruins. Whether I sat still, doing nothing and looking at nothing, or threw myself into work, it kept parching miserably. Like a lump of dry soil crumbling in the palm of your hand at the slightest touch, like dust, easily carried away by the wind. On the outside, I was fine. I smiled and told everyone I was happy, just as I always did. I said that every minute, every second of this life I was living was precious. But in truth, I didn't know what was precious or how to cherish it. I dreaded the thought of my desolate foundation being exposed, so I kept saying I was okay. I did my best to act as if nothing was wrong, separating my inside from my outside like that. I eventually forgot how to water myself, how to tend to the deep cracks that had silently split open within me. I want to wash with hot water. I want to wash. I have to wash. For days, my body didn't move at all as that thought echoed in my mind. When I finally peeled myself off the bed and turned to glance at the clock, something in the corner of the room caught my eye. It was the auraria tree I had nurtured with so much care for so long, a plant I'd fallen in love with at first sight, in a flower shop I'd stumbled upon and brought home, my only companion. Raising that auraria tree taught me something. Even nurturing a single plant isn't easy. I wanted to take good care of this little guy, the only living thing in my tiny 13-meter square space. I picked 2 days each week to water it and gave it as much attention as I felt love for it. But soon after, the auraria began to wither. The mistake of a novice gardener is always ignorant affection. Panicked, I searched online for ways to save the auraria. The problem was overwatering. The advice was I had to let the plant dry out for a few days without giving it any water. I itched with the urge to water it, but I held back. Slowly, the auraria's leaves began to regain their vitality. Just as I was overcoming one hurdle, another problem appeared. This time, it was sunlight. My house faces south and gets plenty of sunshine, so I placed the auraria, which barely reached my calves, right in the sunniest spot by the window, hoping it would quickly grow as tall as my waist. But what the heck? The auraria leaves lost their beautiful green sheen and turned a dull, lifeless brown. When I touched them lightly, I heard the rustling sound of brittle, dry leaves. Then, the once lush foliage fell away in clumps. This time, the problem was too much sunlight. Another internet search told me that auraria trees grow best in semi-shade. It had been suffering because I'd given it too much light. I had almost killed this little guy several times. The failure of a novice gardener, again, was ignorant affection. But the auraria, having survived these life or death crises through my countless trials and errors, became like family to me. I wiped the dust off its leaves one by one, sprayed insecticide when bugs appeared. In the cold winter, I even pulled out the circulator I normally only used in summer, letting it gently air the plant. It was extraordinary care. The auraria grew quickly, as if it recognized my efforts. Before I knew it, it had reached the height of my waist. But when was the last time I had taken care of this plant I had once nurtured so tenderly? I got up and walked closer to it. There were so many dried and twisted leaves scattered across the parched soil. I cared for you so much, but you died too. I stared blankly at it, then wondered, how do you dispose of a dead plant? I'd spent so long searching for how to save, and now I found myself searching for how to dispose. That's when I stumbled upon this on a blog. Before you throw away a dead plant, lightly scratch the stem with your fingernail. If the stem is green, it's still alive. Give it some love and nurture it again. Even when all the dry leaves fall, new ones will bloom beautifully. It looked like a dead tree, but could it still be alive? Half in doubt, I scratched the auraria stem with my fingernail. Between the scratched bark, the delicate green flesh was clearly visible. I cradled this fragile, waist-high plant in my arms and carried it straight to the bathroom. I turned on the shower and began to water it. Even the few remaining leaves that had clung to life fell away under the rushing water. But the belief that it was alive didn't leave me. I drenched the auraria, and before I knew it, I was soaked too. I placed the auraria carefully on one side of the bathroom, then peeled off my wet clothes. Turning the shower knob, I let the water run hot until it poured down, dripping evenly from my head to my toes. The water flowed down my entire body. This warmth felt like a gift. Because I didn't even know how long it had been since I last showered. I watered myself again and again until the bathroom was filled with hot steam. That's how I decided to live with this plant again. 있어요. 네, 마음이 힘들 때도 많고, 근데 힘들 때가 있으면 좋은 것 같아요. 힘들면 나중에 그 행복한 감정들은 더 행복하다고 생각합니다. 그래서 네, 좋은 것 같아요. 힘든 시간들은 모든 사람은 다 있는데 이겨내는 거는 너만 할 수 있어. 할 수 있고 항상 너의 옆에는 우리가 있어서 걱정 안 해도 되고 시간 지나가면 잘 될 거니까 할 수 있어. 네, 여러분 수요일에 책을 다 읽었는데 이거 들어줘서 너무너무 감사하고요. 오늘도 잠을 잘 자고 내일도 열심히 일하자. 사랑해. Thursday. Pieces of me. Loved completely. I love apples. I love their rich sweetness, perfect hint of tartness, and that juicy burst that fills my mouth. I love the sweet, tender apples that turn soft and mushy inside an apple pie. I love the crisp, green apples that smell like freshly cut grass. I love the little chunks of apple hiding in potato salad, waiting to be discovered. Sometimes I go to the market just to buy apples. There are piles and piles of different kinds of apples. As I walk past the bright, red, shiny ones, I always notice a bunch of apples tucked away in one corner. They're labeled ugly apples. They're also much cheaper, which makes them a great find for an apple lover like me. Even though their skins are a little bruised or scratched, they're just as delicious and fragrant as any other apple. I love these ugly apples too, but I hate that they're called ugly apples. Some markets try to be nicer and call them frugal apples, but I hate that name too. It's not ugly, sure, but it still feels like they're just being called cheap apples. These apples are wonderful in so many ways, and I don't like that people judge them just because of how they look. That's why I want to give them pretty names. What if apples had names like these? An apple that looks tough on the outside, but is sweet on the inside. A red shiny apple that's perfect for photos. An apple with a soft texture, perfect for making jam. Or even a crunchy sour apple that captures the freshness of first love. Which apple are you drawn to? Is there an apple you don't find lovely? Sometimes we call ourselves ugly apples. Someone might think I'm shy and won't be able to speak properly and label themselves as a shy person. But what about a person with a quiet voice but something worth listening to? Another might think people see me as indecisive, unstable. But what about a creative soul who explores different paths before finding the right one? We tend to accept people's labels and think, oh, that's just the way they are. I do that too. But what if you gave yourself a prettier label? It's okay if you're not perfect, because there's no such thing as perfection. Think about your pain and your joy. Find yourself, hold yourself close, and listen to your own story. That means to give yourself a beautiful label, you first need to love yourself. Just like I gave these apples pretty names because I love apples, I love the courageous me who kicks off the blanket and gets out of bed. Even on mornings when it feels impossible to open my eyes, I love the kind me who holds the elevator door open for the delivery person. I love the carefree me who reads a book and dozes off on the couch. I love the sincere me who takes one step after another, right foot after left. Instead of focusing on what others think of you, give yourself a beautiful label and call yourself with affection. It's okay if you can't think of a label right now. It could be something as simple as, I love the me who's thinking about my label. I love the me who's here, right now. I love the me who's learning to love myself. 이 모든 얘기가 너무 좋았고요. 모든 모습을, 너의 개인 모습을 사랑하라고 하는 이 얘기인데 너무 사랑스럽고 좋다고 생각합니다. 네, 한국 도착하고 나서 제로베이스원 이름도 받았고 제로즈와 함께 이렇게 이름을 지을 수 있는 게 너무 좋았고요. 제로베이스원은 가족, 우리 9명 다 함께 가족이고 팀은 이게 우리다. 그리고 제로즈는 덕분에 우리가 이렇게 될 수 있어서 너무너무 감사하고요. 이 모든 이름들 많이 받았는데 다 너무 감정 있는 의미 있어서 너무너무 감사해요. 우리 팀에서 제 인상 깊었던 이름에서 제가 리키를 선택하겠습니다. 리키는 영어 이름이니까 뭐가 저랑 리키는 뭐가 감성하고 농담, 문화도 좀 비슷하겠다를 생각했고 지금도 그게 딱 맞았어요. 네, 그래서 리키랑 같이 농담을 잘 칩니다. 여러분, 목요일입니다. 고생이 너무 많았고요. 내일 금요일이야. 곧 왔어. 조금만 더 버티자. 그래서 오늘은 잠을 자고 내일도 또 볼 테니까 내일 보자. I love you. 네, 안녕하세요 여러분. 매트입니다. 오늘은 금요일입니다. 이번 주 진짜 고생이 너무너무 많았고요. 드디어 주말이 왔다. 우후! 4일 동안 이렇게 책을 읽었는데 오늘은 마지막 날입니다. 그래서 열심히 해볼게요. 네. 주말이니까 푹 쉬세요. Friday. I'm blue. I went to my parents' house after a long time. It was my birthday. As always, my mom cooked up a storm in the kitchen, preparing a feast just for me. I was already full, but she kept insisting I eat more, so I shoved a few extra bites into my mouth. My son is such a sweet boy who listens to his mom so well. My sweet son never even went through puberty. I'm so grateful to you for growing up so well and being so good. My son is the best. She playfully gave me a thumbs up with a big smile, and I couldn't help but smile back. But she's wrong. I did go through puberty. Back then, in middle school, I could already see how much my parents were struggling, so I kept everything to myself. In my puberty, I was blue, just like everyone else. My voice was getting heavier, lower, and even that felt awkward to me. When I was little, I was always happy and excited. But as I grew up, the things I had to study piled up. I didn't even know what I wanted to do in the future or what I really liked. But people always asked, What's your dream? What kind of person do you want to be? Those questions weighed on me. I used to feel like the center of my world, but at some point, I realized I was just a small part of it. With that shift, I started noticing things I wanted, but knew my family couldn't afford. And slowly, I began giving up on things before I even had a chance to start. A mess of bad emotions tangled up inside of me, like a blue bruise only I could see, hidden tightly under my clothes. It was a shameful feeling, one I didn't want to let anyone know about, something I didn't want anyone to catch. My own blue that I never wanted to show. My blue spread deeper and murkier until it filled my whole body. My mom still doesn't know. But there was a day when I tried to run away from home. You know those days when you just can't sit at your desk, don't want to talk to anyone, but still feel like you have to do something? It's exam period. I'll study in the library and come home late. I lied to my mom, grabbing my bag and heading straight to the express bus terminal. I'd been there a few times before when I traveled to my grandma's house with my mom, but this was my first time going alone, and I couldn't shake the worry that I might get on the wrong bus. I double-checked the bus number, then checked it again. Finally, I got on. As the bus pulled away, the scenery outside shifted from square buildings and crowded streets to wide open rice paddies and empty fields. The bus rumbled on for a long time. My destination was the observatory. In front of the ticket booth were me and friends from another school's astronomy club. I had bravely run away, but I was also a little scared. Then I spotted their teacher standing by the ticket booth, and I felt relieved. I guess I was still just a kid. I hiked up the dark mountain with them. Out of breath by the time we reached the observatory, I was overwhelmed by the towering dome as its roof began to open, shifting like a transforming robot. Wow, they all gasped in unison. I couldn't bring myself to say anything loud, but inside I was shouting, "Wow, this is amazing." Then I looked up at the stars through the enormous astronomical telescope. The first star I saw was the morning star. It was Venus. To the naked eye, the star was just a tiny dot of light. But through the telescope, it looked like a round ball of desert sand. I'd been quiet the whole time, but at that sight, a small wow escaped from my lips. Then, one of the students asked the teacher, "Teacher, Venus is the hottest star, right?" The teacher replied, "Not really. Venus isn't really hot. Scientists have recently discovered the hottest star in the universe. Here's a question for you. Does anyone know what color that star is?" Students from the astronomy club eagerly shouted out answers. Red, yellow, orange. Caught up in their excitement, I said, "Red," to myself and looked at the teacher. But the teacher shook his head and said, "No, it's a perfect blue." The group fell into a quiet murmur. Surprised by the unexpected answer, I felt a sudden surge of curiosity. When we look up at the night sky, all the stars seem like they're twinkling white, right? But in reality, each of those stars has its own color, and each color tells us something about the star's temperature. Yellow stars are hotter than red stars, and blue stars are hotter than yellow stars. Blue stars are the bluest, but they burn the hottest. That night was the biggest deviation of my life. I returned home as if nothing had happened. Curious, I looked up the blue star the astronomy club teacher had mentioned. The star's name was White Dwarf RX J0439 8-6809. It was a beautiful star, radiating an intense blue light, and it was 42 times hotter than the sun. I'm blue. But this sentence doesn't feel as heavy or depressing as it once did, because now I am the strong and beautiful blue. Tender bruises that hurt with even the slightest touch had once covered me in blue. Those growing pains shaped me into the person I am today. I'm an adult now, but if I could meet my teenage self, I really want to say, blue is a piece of life. Blue is beautiful and sad. You're in a blue paradise. 너무 감성적이었었어요. 제가 뭐가 이 책이랑 나의 이모션들 너무 잘 맞는 것 같아서 너무 좋았어요. 아, 진짜요? 그 책에서 그 별 이름 있었는데 너무 예쁘네요. 진짜. 제 누나보단 더 괜찮긴 했는데 뭐 여기 책도 있는 것처럼 뭔가 부모님한테 이렇게 너무 힘들게는 안 만들고 싶었는데 근데 여기 그 슬픈 감정도 있는 게가 예쁜 것 같아요. 그 슬픈 감정을 내가 더 건강한 사람을 될 수 있게 해줘서 감사해요. 네. 말이 되나? 네, 사춘기 때, 뭐, 많이 헷갈릴 수 있고, 너의 마음을 확실하게 모를 수 있는데, 결국에 다 시간 지나가고 나서, 너가 되고 싶은 사람이 잘 될 거니까 너무 걱정 말고, 재밌게 놀면 돼. 프리하게 놀고, 멋있는 성인이 돼줬으면 좋겠어요. 저희 5집 앨범 새로운 노래 블루가 나오는데 노래가 엄청 좋다고 생각했고 춤도 엄청 아름답고 이 책이랑 감성이 비슷한 내용이에요. 그래서 이거를 잘 이해해주고 우리 신곡을 들어주면 너무 감사하겠습니다. 금요일인데 이번 주 너무너무 고생했고요. 너무너무 사랑하고 오늘도 잠을 잘 자고 주말이니까 푹 쉬고 나중에 또 보일 거니까 너무너무 보고 싶을 거야. It's Friday. You guys have worked so hard. You guys are everything to me. So I hope you have the best sleep ever. And the weekend is coming up. So I want you to enjoy yourself. And good night. I love you so much.